Firemanship is fast approaching. It is almost here. If you were there last year, you know how amazing it was. If you've been involved with Firemanship, you know how amazing it is. And so it is coming up in July 14th through the 18th. Man, get registered. If you're not, why not? It's in Aurora, right outside of Chicago. It's an amazing, amazing experience. Here's the deal. I am teaching 2 days of workshop, the same workshop 2 days in a row on Thursday and Friday. But right now, registration is extremely low for those two workshops. It is the Culture Forge. It is the class that me and Sam and Rob Fisher have been building, working on, putting on. It's an amazing class. If you've been a part of it, then you know all about the teams, the mascots, the spaghettis, the value building, the Lego. You know what it's about. And it's the class I always wanted to attend. And that's the class that I built. And it's an amazing time. But the problem is I'm going to have to pull the plug on it if people don't register for it. So that being said, go and register for the Culture Forge so that it can happen. If not, I get it. Life is life. Go register. I'll see you at Firemanship.
In the demanding world of firefighting, training against real-world scenarios is crucial. Yet traditional training facilities often fall short in providing realistic, versatile, and cost-effective training solutions. Affordable Drill Towers presents a groundbreaking solution. By positioning an affordable drill tower alongside your existing Connex boxes burn buildings, a realm of realistic, multi-level training scenarios is unlocked. This integration has been adopted successfully by various fire departments, enhancing their training capabilities exponentially. Delve into the heart of live fire training scenarios within the Connex boxes, now amplified by the ADT's multi-floor access, providing an unparalleled training ground.
We started looking at Connex boxes about probably 10 years ago. To me, you can't beat them, especially for the price. The Affordable Drill Tower was the same way. We've got 6 floors, we've got standpipes on every floor, we've got more anchor points than you can count, we've got removable floors, removable stairs. We can go into the 2nd and 3rd floor off the drill tower, so whether you want to use it as an external stairwell or a high-rise, we can do all that and mimic just about any type of situation that the members of the fire department might encounter.
Experience cost-effectiveness, enhanced realistic training, versatile operations, easy multi-floor access, and innovative solutions to age-old training challenges. Take your fire department's training to the next level with Affordable Drill Towers. Reach out to Affordable Drill Towers to elevate your training capabilities today.
Corlymore, Firehouse Vigilance. It is weekly scrap number 303. My guest tonight is Jonathan Brumley. He is a lieutenant with the Denver Fire Department who began his fire service career in 2009 and has served as both career and volunteer. Jonathan has instructed lectures, hands-on formats at fire conferences nationally, and has published works in several trade magazines. He has been married for 16 years to his beautiful wife, Molly, and has 3 awesome daughters. Also, one handful of a German short-haired pointer named Tucker. Welcome back to the scrap. One of the originals. Back to the scrap, my brother, Jonathan Brumley, for episode number 303.
Hello there. Thank you so much for the intro. Love it.
And I have to tell everybody what an odyssey it was to get you back on the show. Not because of you, but because of me. Absolutely. I messed up the scheduling with Tina and Jonathan. So Tina was last week. I double booked him. So I called Jonathan. He was gracious enough to move it to today, this Monday. And then I was like, oh, I can move all the scraps to Tuesday. And so I moved him to Tuesday, at which point I messed up and had to move him back to tonight. So this is officially the final scrap that won't be on Tuesday, allegedly. So all that being said, is there anything I missed in the intro? Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think the only thing that you missed was I'm your first guest that gets to say congratulations on your retirement, Corley.
You are the first, and
So that'd be the only thing that I'd add. Congratulations. That's a huge deal. We're all excited for you.
thank you, brother. And it's still not real. It still feels like I'm on a 4-day, and like it's not sunk in that it's real yet. That like
Yeah.
I'm not going back. So thank you for that very much. Let's talk about the sponsors. We'll get those out of the way so we can get to the beautiful questions and get the scrap going. You spoke, Snap Tight listened. Built with you in mind, the newly launched American made Supreme 2 is designed to perform at low and high pressures. With Supreme 2, you can count on improved packing and kink resistance, making it a game changer for all municipal firefighting needs and price points. Now offering guaranteed shipping, 28-day lead times. Visit snaptighthose.com to learn more and find a distributor near you. Affordable Drill Towers, on a mission to bring you cost-effective and versatile training props like the affordable bailout prop, which allows you to practice window bailouts, ladder bailouts, and ladder high-point rescues. They also make the affordable standpipe prop, which you can roll into the classroom for standpipe theory and then roll it into the parking lot and pump realistic flows and pressures. They also make the affordable drill tower. Of their namesake, it comes in several configurations and standard with the standpipe system. You can choose from 1 or 2 sets of stairs integrated into your existing Connex boxes for multi-story access or freestanding on a slab. All models NFPA 1402 compliant and gain you ISO credit. The only thing you can't do on an affordable drill tower is live fire training. Call Steve 844-55-TOWER or drop an email to info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Firefighter safety and accountability starts with being able to quickly find and identify individual firefighters operating on the fire ground. Identifier Safety combines the best in photoluminescent materials for durable firefighter identification solutions that can glow for up to 20 hours. No switches, no batteries, which means you can rapidly identify firefighters by name, unit, or assignment, even under hot fire conditions. All specifically designed and tested for the rigors of the job. Be seen, on scene. Identifiersafety.com. And the last but not least, Insight Fire Training, thermography certified fire service professionals. Insight Fire Training specializes in training individuals across the globe in the tactical use of thermal imaging cameras in emergency services. Insight Fire Training developed the world's first thermography-based collegiate firefighter certification and trains firefighters, manufacturers, and industrial professionals across the globe. And if you know Andy Starnes, you know his cadre is simply a collection of the best human beings on the planet. So all that being said, let's get to scrapping and let's focus on Jonathan Brumley.
Love it.
I love this topic. As always, I always reach out to the guests and say, hey, what do you want to talk about? And of course, you're known for moving big lines and making it look easy. So we're going to talk about moving big lines. Don't get me wrong. But I love this topic that you sent, which was instructing. You've been teaching and instructing and traveling for over a decade. And I just want to, and we've been having a discussion. The vigilantes have been having a good discussion about what makes a good instructor. What's tips for, people saying, if I want to instruct, what's some good tips? So let's just start off with lessons learned from a decade of instructing.
Yeah. So it's pretty incredible to even say that it's been that long now, and something that I really didn't even realize until you sent me the topic list. And I'm like, man, what should we talk about? And I realized at this point, man, it's been even longer than I realized. And obviously, over time, you learn what works well, you learn what doesn't work, and it's kind of fun to see how that adapts over time. And so I just kind of took some notes on some quick hitter things on just things that I've recognized. And I'll start out with this. Probably first and foremost, it's sad to say this as an instructor, but sometimes it's easy to lose focus that classes are all about students. They've got to be this student focused. Like the priority number one above all things, take care of the students. You could speak about instructor egos within that conversation, but I mean, we don't really have to too much there. Recognize that these classes aren't about you. It's totally about how do we pass along the skills, that the little bit of information that we've been given over time, and make it student focused. I think two different cadres that I've seen do this so well are probably Brothers in Battle and Nozzle Forward, where, I mean, they're still there at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night some nights, and totally just immersed in we're not done until students are done. And I've tried to adapt some of what I do based on, the mentors that I've had along the way to help encourage that as well. And just recognize that whatever agenda an instructor may put forward, please make sure that we're not moving at our pace, but at the pace of the people who have taken the time to come and join us, on a weekend or a weeknight, whatever class might be. With that being said, you got to work at a pace that matches the abilities of those students. So anytime that I put together a class, I obviously kind of come up with an agenda ahead of time. I usually send that out to the people that I brought along with me. These are the things that I want to cover. But the reality is if we can't move past some of the foundational skills early on, then there's no point in getting deeper into that agenda. We need to focus on those foundational things. And then, as time goes on, maybe you'd be able to build on those a little bit. But what I've noticed over time is I'll build these agendas that, we might not be able to cover in like 12 hours, just so that we have these contingency plans.
Okay.
If we end up with some rock stars, like we start flying through things, so be it. We've got a plan. We're ready to go for that. But I'm okay with if we only get, through the first, 3 or 4 things that I had on the agenda, it's okay that we didn't get to the total of 8, because it matched the skills and abilities of each of the students that we've got going on. With that being said, you can't expect students to perform in skills like at a high performance level if you're not taking the time to cover it. And I've seen it happen several times where you'll have an instructor just start shaking their head. They'll get frustrated. They'll get mad. And oftentimes, if you go to the student, you're like, what's going on here? This is the first time I've ever even seen this done, So it's hard to, take a step back sometimes and do that. But if you're not taking the time to teach the skill, people may not be good at it. And so having a level head through that whole process is something that I wish I saw out of more instructors, if I'm being completely honest.
Now, do you find yourself when you're building out a class and or building out a hot track, do you find yourself prioritizing the basics? I don't want to say but prioritizing the most important stuff first, so that if you don't get to the stuff, does it make sense what I'm asking?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes sense what you're asking. And my answer is yes. And if you've ever taken one of my classes, I start out my classes pretty much the same way every single time, especially when it comes to engine ops, flowing. I might spend an hour to an hour and a half just with static flowing, like no movement whatsoever. We'll cover a couple of different grips. And I jokingly call it my morning yoga. I mean, it gives people the opportunity to get, down on their knees where they may not have done that in the past, couple of weeks. And, just really get stretched out. But the thing is I'm trying to build in those foundational pieces, because especially when it comes to hose handling, if we can't do that from a static position, there's no reason why we need to ever move on to something like flowing or moving, or trying to, build these grandiose scenarios where I'm expecting people to make multiple turns, go up vertical stretching, all of these things. Like if we can't hold on to a hose line from the very beginning, like we have to solidify that early on before we can do all of these other things. So absolutely, I'm going to front load it and make sure that we get those pieces out of the way before we dive into the rest of what a class would be.
So let me ask you this, which is off topic, but on topic, because this comes up over and over on social media. And I'm sure you followed some threads at times, but someone will invariably post a video of someone flowing with no gear, no pack, and it's obviously that they're getting their mechanics down, their body mechanics down. Well, I say obviously, but, and then of course the comment section will go crazy with, oh yeah, do that in gear, do that when there's furniture, do that when it's not a parking lot. How do you address that mentality of starting basically so that you can advance? Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, if we're expecting somebody to last for 10 hours through a class, there has to be some longevity built into that. And for some of those foundational pieces where we're not in any kind of ideal H, where we're just learning a particular skill, I don't see any reason why somebody has to be, fully bunked up, SCBA on, mask on their face, sucking down air. There's no reason for that whatsoever. I'm a huge believer in crawl, walk, run, myself included, in that morning yoga section, if you will. I'm going to be standing there most of the time in, a t-shirt, my bunker pants, a helmet, gloves. We'll call it good there. And then as time goes on, as we're moving into structures, as we're introducing some of those elements of stress, like limited visibility, heat, whatever it might be, then obviously the PPE follows suit with that. But for these foundational things early on, I have no problem whatsoever with building up to the progression of finishing the day with all of the PPE, with all of the stress, all of the additional realism that we can add in the training environment.
Right on. No, excellent answer. Steve Mouch, great minds think alike, because he asked it in YouTube. It's kind of the same thing I just asked. So perfect. Jeremy Humphrey has the first question coming at you from the audience, and he wants to know, how do you effectively navigate the challenging landscape of a classroom filled with diverse array of skill levels?
You can kind of gauge pretty quickly what skill levels are, even from that static position that I'm talking about. And so, for those individuals where you might see that a little more instruction might be needed, there's two ways that I'll typically handle that. One of them is I'm going to get down on the same level with that student, and I'm going to make sure that we dial in those mechanics. And that person might be on a hand line flowing for like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, not at a time, but like total over the course of those first few minutes in class, where somebody else, they might hop on for 30 seconds. I'll check it out and like, oh yeah, good to go. No additional instruction needed. So that's one way, is just making sure that those people that we're seeing struggling early on will get more time on that hand line early on in class. The other way that I've done it as well is kind of grouping people as I kind of see those things happen, where if we're seeing a group of people who are just incredibly dialed in a skill, we'll make sure that they're getting paired up together. And we're going to increase intensity in some way that we might not do for other groups.
Okay.
That especially comes into play towards the end of the day in scenario-based training, where let's say I might be covering something like a vertical stretch, right? For a group that might be struggling, they might go to floor 3, make fire attack, more of a hit and move style of fire attack. And then we'll discuss, afterwards. For a group that's absolutely dialed, we might send them to floor 5, expect them to flow and move. We'll throw a victim on the floor and throw in, some additional elements that we think that they can handle. So especially as the day goes on and as you add elements of realism to it, I think you can really dial it up for those who are able to take it, and then kind of bring things back to a more basic level if somebody is just struggling to keep pace.
Right. No, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
And it ties back to your first point, which was know your students, just in it's student focused. So,
Absolutely.
love it.
So I guess the next thing I'd say is, like, you're never going to have enough time to teach a skill. That's just inevitable. We could plan out, 3 days in a row of hands-on, and it'll still seem like, oh man, I just didn't have enough time to cover that. And one thing that Lieutenant Ray McCormack pointed out to me was, we were teaching flowing and moving at FDIC in a hands-on format. He's like, you got 15 minutes to teach a skill. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is something that I wouldn't do like in the course of like 2 days, be able to get all this information. And the first group came through, and he's like, and I apologize. I'm like, I'm sorry guys, this is going to be really time compressed. And he's like, hey, pause. Like, don't apologize. You weren't the one who came up with this time constraint. You just got to be better at being more concise and giving the little pieces of instruction that they're going to need. And it really forces you to think about what's important in your pieces of instruction. And if we're wasting time apologizing, that's time that they didn't get learning. And so that was something that was really cool and eye-opening to me, is that it really helped me be more concise in what I was going to say to students in that time compressed environment.
Yeah, learning from Uncle Ray without a
Mhm.
doubt. Especially the whole "don't waste time apologizing." You don't have that much time.
No, no, nobody
That's
has time to
awesome.
apologize. You're just wasting everybody's time by doing it.
No, that is awesome. Anything that surprised you over the decade of instruct? What's a big any? What am I trying to say? Just a something that consistently comes up over and over, and you're like, oh again, or anything like that. Surprises or things that you're constantly having to address.
I think one of the biggest things that I have to address over and over is backup firefighters. More and more, I think it's improving, and I'll be completely honest. Like nozzle forward is hands down like the like gold standard when it comes to teaching hose handling as a nozzle firefighter and especially as a backup as well. But over and over again, I see just like poor technique when it comes to how people are moving hose lines behind the nozzle, where we're just not spacing our firefighters out to move hose lines efficiently. People still really like to stack up right behind the nozzle. They lift hose line up off of the ground, which is just incredibly destructive for the person who is actually trying to operate that nozzle. It's making them work harder. And I think that that's what I have to spend the most time on in my instruction is really dialing in the technique of the backup. I think most of us get a lot of opportunities if we're willing to take it to have some nozzle time in the training environment. Obviously, we all want more in the live fire and
Sure.
the actual firefighting. Um, but we don't spend enough time as a backup firefighter really dialing in the technique of doing that skill.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Bubba Tischer coming at you. He says, when training with big lines, do you start with the big line, then go to small, or small and go to big?
So it's really going to be dependent on whoever is organizing the class, like what they want me to cover. But given the opportunity, I am going to do big line every single time. So in those first foundational pieces that I'm trying to lay for people, I will pretty much always put a big line on the ground, whether that's, 2.5, 2.25, something like that. And the reason for that is because it will reveal all of the flaws that a person has very quickly. Where with 1.75 you can muscle through it so much easier that people won't recognize the flaw in the technique. They'll just say, "Oh yeah, I'm able to do this. There's no reason for me to make any changes." But as soon as you add the big line element to it, where they're getting more nozzle reaction, obviously flowing a significantly more gallonage out of the end of the line, those techniques really seem to expose themselves well. And that's why in how I progress through teaching it, a lot of times, I don't give much instruction outside of, hey, this is the grip that we're going to cover. Here are the finer points that you need to know. But I don't give any instruction in terms of like where I'm expecting people to flow water to. And inevitably what happens is somebody will open the line, 30 seconds to a minute. It pretty much just goes straight out in front of them. They'll shut it down and, we'll move on to the next person. Well, that's why it takes me an hour and a half, because I'm not going to let it stop at that. We've got to move on to, hey, let's do something as simple as I need you to flow all the way over 90 degrees to your left side. I need you to flow all the way over 90 degrees to your right side. Get that line above us. And by the end of it, anybody standing around this area should be absolutely soaking wet. Nobody should know where to stand because that nozzle is going to get everywhere. And it's incredible how uncomfortable people get just simply by saying, hey, I need you to flow all the way over to your left side. And then immediately I need you to flow all the way over to your right side. We haven't introduced any type of movement into it whatsoever in terms of forward, back, any of those things. And that's simply enough to get a significant portion of people uncomfortable. And they may not get that feeling if we're just doing that with 1.75. So that's why I love doing it with 2.5. And probably my favorite thing to do is do like 8 hours of instruction where we only give you a big line. And then right at the end of the day, we put 1.75 in somebody's hands. And it's just like these light bulb moments where they're like, oh my gosh, like this thing is a garden hose. Why in the world was this ever something that I thought was difficult? Because people are just crushing it when it comes to those scenarios when you finally put that small line in their hand. And they just wouldn't have that light bulb moment if we quickly introduce that 1.75.
No, I love it. I love it. Uh, absolutely. Great question. First of all, on whether you go big to small or small to big, because I've heard both ways. But I love the fact, like you said, if you have the choice, you're going big all day, and then
Going big the whole day.
and then the light bulb moment is just that much sweeter.
Yep.
I love it. Get your questions in. Keep throwing them in here. I'm moving on. And of course, anything you bring up on training, if you have more to cover, please, please, please feel free to do so. Is there anything you absolutely, uh, generically speaking, of course, not specifically, anything that
Mhm.
just makes you roll your eyes each time you hear it, or you're like, oh no, not again, that kind of thing?
No, I'm pretty generally okay with whatever, and we'll sort out whatever questions, you know.
Okay.
I think the one thing that really makes me roll my eyes at times is people incorrectly applying a clamp slide. Um, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's where you would put the line underneath your leg and then try to scoot forward, which, by all means do it, but try to apply it correctly. Where people really struggle is not understanding that it's very much meant to be a flow and move type thing, but a significant number of people are still trying to keep the line open, and then the line gets to be a little ridiculous where sometimes they're flowing in front of them, they're bringing it back, and the line starts flowing back over their head. And so that's the one where I'm like, let's take a second and make sure that you understand the context of that particular move. But other than that, I think most people are pretty dialed.
Right. Right on. Right. And you're pretty laid back. You're a pretty laid back instructor.
Yeah, I hope that nobody has ever heard me yell at them.
Fair.
Yeah.
Chuck H coming at you says training is huge, no doubt. But how much do you believe having the right equipment matters? For example, the right hose and nozzle combination.
I think it plays a huge role. I absolutely do. And that was one of those things early on in my journey. And that's kind of what got me starting as an instructor, was well, I'll take a step back. That's what started me going to classes, was recognizing that I was struggling and that I sucked at a lot of skills. And so I started taking a lot of classes, and I would watch videos online of these guys just doing so many incredible things with hose line that I knew I wasn't capable of. And I was wondering, I'm like, so where's this magic trick? Like what's going on behind the scenes that I don't know about? And the more that you dive into it, the more you recognize that what it comes down to is creating attack packages that are successful, and that work both in combination with the nozzle and the hose line, that's good for the end user. And it's not so much just, hey, this nozzle is fantastic, because if you throw that on a garbage piece of hose, no matter how good that nozzle is, it's not going to do well. It's the same with the hose package. If you've got, a gold standard hose, but you throw a garbage nozzle on the end of it, that's not going to be successful either. So absolutely, we have to talk about and make sure that we're putting something in the hands of our firefighters that's going to be successful both in the midst of fire attack and on the drill ground. And I think that we do a poor job sometimes, and it just comes down to looking at a price tag or what something says that it's going to do in a magazine, as opposed to actually really putting it through paces before we make those purchase decisions. So absolutely, pair hose and nozzles correctly, put good attack packages in their hand, and you'll be amazed at what your firefighters will start being able to do with it.
No, that's and it's crazy because I just this week I was seeing people making comments on social media, of course, that said like, well, you can't do that with our we could never. What are you pumping that at 30 psi? And those kind of statements. Because and the crazy part is those are the kind of statements I used to make when I used to
Mhm.
look at the YouTube videos. I'd be like, we can't do that with ours, and
Right.
we had like 100 pounds nozzle reaction on flowing 225, and it
Mhm.
was just we couldn't do the things that they were doing in those videos. But we
No.
did. It was our ignorance of the package.
So I posted a video on an Instagram page that got quite a few views not long ago, of something that we call the Zoolander drill. And basically all it is it's going through various grip transitions. And why it's called the Zoolander drill is because Derek Zoolander's downfall is he wasn't an ambi,
Ambi Turner, right, right.
right? And so we want to be ambi turners, capable of flowing 90 left, 90 right, all the way above, sometimes behind. And I posted a video of me doing that, going through various grip transitions at the same time. And it was done with 2.5. We pitot it probably at about 45 psi at the tip. So it was slightly under pumped. If I had a pump operator who was pumping that like a cross sleigh for 1 3/4 inches, Absolutely, that video is not happening, and what you would have seen is that line being blown right out of my hands. So that is part of the magic trick, is making sure that we're putting together quality attack packages and that we're pumping them correctly.
Having a good operator who knows what he's giving you. And
Absolutely.
no, and yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Taylor Shepard, great question. He says, Lieutenant, what's your stance on 2-inch versus 2 1/4 versus 2 1/2? I like the smile already.
Oh man, I have an opinion, and people in Ohio are gonna hate me for it, but I don't see a whole lot of reason for 2 inch, especially with the advent of the 2 1/4. I love the 2 1/4, especially in the interior environment. It's phenomenal, but it does come down to what are we asking our hose lines to do, and I kind of you can dive down a lot of rabbit holes, right, with this particular topic, but really what it comes down to is what is our staffing, what are we asking this hose line to do, are we asking this to be a jack of all trades thing, or um, do we have enough room on our apparatus to put multiple sizes of hose lines on this thing? Because if, let's just say I'm a 3-man engine company in suburbia where I have no type of standpipe exposure, my recommendation all day long is going to be 2 1/4. But as soon as we put that particular attack package off of a standpipe that was, installed in 1976, that might be a loser again. As soon as we ask it to flow something like a portable monitor, a RAM or a Blitzfire, something like that, that's going to be a loser also. So really it comes down to what all are we asking this hose line to do for us, and then match the hose line size for what we're actually trying to do on the fire ground. I do have some opinions, but it really comes down to are we asking this to do multiple operations, or is this just a one-trick pony for us?
Right on. So your opinion and a magic wand question, just to pin you in the corner. Magic wand question. Brumley picks his big line. What are you going with, and the reasons why?
2 1/4 with 1 1/8. It works so phenomenally in the interior environment, flowing a very significant amount of water, and it is so capable of making turns, and it's just overall significantly lighter than 2 1/2. It's really undeniable, and you're getting the same flows out of it. So yeah,
You're getting up around 240 gallons per minute without even over pumping at all, or even higher.
I would say somewhere around 250 to 260.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. No, beautiful question, beautiful answer. Thank you, Taylor. Let's talk about hose stretches in the multifamily environment.
Yeah. So
Let's
this
get,
is the top.
as if we're not in your wheelhouse. Let's get in your wheelhouse.
It is in my wheelhouse. So for those who don't know, I work in downtown Denver. Vertical stretching is what we're all about, is really what it comes down to. It's because there are so many larger buildings, and granted, not all of them are high rise, but a significant amount of our hose stretches, if not the majority of our hose stretches, will end up being vertical. And so definitely something that I love doing. Multifamily, obviously, that is a very, very broad topic. That could be everything from a townhouse to a triplex to, a 3-story pitched roof and more of a complex style apartment, all the way up to now mid-rise and high-rise. So to say that it's like one size fits all isn't the case at all. And this is absolutely my favorite fire to go to, is a multifamily fire. And probably a lot of that comes from working on Houston's southwest side. You've got apparatus there going to, roughly 200 working fires a year. And, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'd say 65 to 70% of the work that they do is in multifamily. So that's where this love really came from. But really what is so exciting about the multifamily environment is if you were to lose a structure or a couple of structures in suburbia where, let's say, 10 families get displaced, right? That would literally be burning down, half of a block of single family dwellings, right? And that's going to be like a once in a, 100 years fire for most jurisdictions, if not ever.
Right.
But to displace 10 families in the multifamily environment, that could be as simple as a tactical error by a first due apparatus. So I think that's what's so exciting about it, is the stakes are so great. And the other beautiful thing is so many people get work on those fires that, you have have multiple hand lines in play. You have trucks cutting holes. You have multiple companies performing searches all at the same time. And a lot of times we're not talking about making access on the Alpha side, right? Because we have exposures on Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. They are all over this place. And so it's just really cool as an officer and as a firefighter to really start diving into the nuts and bolts of those tactical decisions that have to be made in a really time compressed decision-making process. So I love that about it. What I will say is most important, especially for the engine company in these environments, is recon. You have to get out and check these things out. We're doing things like checking fire panels. We're going to maps inside of these buildings to help guide us and direct us. We're listening. We're looking. We're trying to figure out what types of building systems are really obvious to us to help us out in this whole playbook that we're about to unfold here.
And when you're saying recon, you're meaning way before the call comes out.
I mean, I'm thinking way before the call, but I'm also thinking in those first few seconds.
Okay. I want to be clear.
Yeah. It's a little bit of both. Hopefully we're familiar enough with our jurisdictions that we are getting out and we're checking out these buildings ahead of time. But we can't just hop off of a rig when the place is actually on fire and just start stretching blind. So that recon process has to take place before we just start pulling hose lines off of our apparatus. Otherwise, we will find ourselves up a creek pretty quick, and most often we're going to be stretching way too short in that environment as well. So for those individuals showing up first due, that officer is going to have to make some really key decisions in those first couple of minutes, where the firefighters obviously will be doing their own type of size up, but there is a little bit of a delay there, I feel like, for the firefighters, where it takes some tactical discipline to just pause and let those pieces come into view a little bit more before we just start stretching blindly like we might do at a single family dwelling. It's super easy to pull the parking brake on a single family and just stretch, a 200-foot cross lay, and we know that that's going to work. That's just not the case for the majority of multifamily. So take time to recon. And I will say this, like, recon isn't a 360, because on some of these buildings, a 360 is going to take 4 or 5 minutes if you're walking around that thing. So recon entails way more than expecting just a 360 to do the work for you. Factors that I'm looking for is, like, what kind of access do we have to the footprint of these buildings? Some of them we can drive all the way around. Some of them we can't. That's going to impact the type of stretch that I'm going to do. It's also going to impact where we're going to position engines so that ladders can get up. Stairwell locations are huge. They help us really break down the building, because that's going to be how that we access buildings. So from an engine company perspective, something that I'm trying to get better at and trying to get better at instilling in the people, not only that I work with, but also that I instruct, is please estimate the stretch before we just pull hose lines off of this. And so Steve Robertson in Columbus Division of Fire was probably the first person that I heard lay out this formula. But looking at the length of the building plus the width of the building plus setback, and then we're adding in that elevation element. Well, with a multifamily building, let's say especially with a mid-rise, it might have a footprint of like 600 feet by 300 feet. I can't pull a hose line to fit the needs of the entire building all at once, because we could end up with 1,000-foot stretch.
Yeah, you're at 900
very
with
easily.
600 plus 300. You haven't even got to the height yet and the setback.
And so with that, I'm looking for my stairwells, because anytime I see a stairwell, that's where I can really start to section off this building. If there's 2 stairwells in the building, I know that I can cut the building in half. If I have 4 stairwells, I can quarter this thing. And because I know that one of them is going to ultimately end up being closer. Obviously, the caveat to that is if I can't drive the apparatus to it, then I've got to go to a different plan. So I think that's why I enjoy it so much, is because it's not always this linear thought process. I obviously have plays in mind ahead of time that I'm looking to call, but I always need to have plan B, C, D in the back pocket ready to go for meeting the needs of each of these building types. One thing that I will say is I think that as I travel more and more, I'm seeing a lot of fire engines that are only laid out for stretches going about 200 feet. And I think that that's going to be a loser in a lot of these environments. Need to be better about at least practicing and hopefully specking apparatus that is capable of getting a lot of hose off very quickly and loading it in a way that really limited manpower is capable of doing it, because it's one thing to build a line that's, let's say, 600 feet out of a static bed, but if one or two people is who is going to be pulling it off of the back of the engine, it better be laid out in a way that 400 feet comes off really easily for these types of stretches. And so that's something that I think that we could do better about in the American Fire Service, is specking apparatus for these longer stretches that all of us have in our environments now.
Right.
It's just something that we're not good at practicing. And kind of for me, in a lot of cases, my plan A is stretching off of the hose bed. It's just proven to be significantly faster than trying to do something like standpipe operations, split stretches, trying to, go vertical and then either do coupling drop or rope stretches over and over again. Stretching directly off of the rig seems to be the fastest route to many of these fires, but we don't have hose lines that are ready to go for that. And then kind of going back to a conversation we had a few minutes ago about, nozzle pressure attack packages. A lot of departments are still using nozzles with a nozzle pressure requiring 100 pounds of pressure. And if we put that into the conversation of a longer stretch compared to a nozzle, even with 75 PSI, we're talking about losing 100 feet of hose off of that to keep an acceptable pump discharge pressure. Now, using a nozzle with a 50 PSI nozzle pressure, we would be losing 200 feet in our stretch with a 100 PSI compared to a 50 PSI nozzle. So attack packages matter, and how we load it is going to matter as well in this
No, I
environment.
love it. I love the discussion and the factors involved that people don't think about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's just, yeah, it's great to bring it to the forefront to discuss. Are you ready for more questions, or you want to cover more factors? Because you got
Oh, man,
both.
let's
You
go
got
with
questions
questions.
coming out the ears, and you got factors to deliver. So I want to keep the balance good.
No,
Some of
let's
it's
go with
going back in
questions. Like
time.
I said, we're here for the students. It's about
There.
them,
Hey,
not me.
way to keep it on point. Kyle Piverall coming at you, and this is a follow up to my question on the big line. He wants to know what's your perfect 1 3/4 end nozzle setup.
I think that there are some pretty phenomenal attack packages out there right now for 1 3/4 lines. I don't think that it's limited to any particular manufacturer. I think every manufacturer now has a phenomenal 1 3/4 line. So I'd be hard pressed to say, one particular manufacturer. But things that I'm looking for is its ability to be loaded onto somebody's shoulder, because whether we're going vertical or we're going horizontal, we're asking people to move hose lines. So how it shoulders, it does matter in my book. Its kink resistance obviously matters, and then its ability to resist things like heat and abrasion, all of that matters as well. So please include all of those factors in your decision making. It goes way beyond just, hey, this one's $700. It's probably better than the one that's $300 per length. So put it through its paces before you make that decision. Now, in terms of nozzles, man, I am partial to anything with a 50 psi nozzle pressure. All right, and it's not so much a combination nozzle versus a smooth bore as it is. There's just not a lot of return investment that I'm seeing from using a nozzle that has a nozzle pressure anything above 50 psi. So I'm good with either as long as we're using that low pressure system.
Nice. Is that Tucker? Tucker's
It
joining
is
us?
Tucker. Yeah, he decided to get up and say hey.
That's awesome. I love big dogs. I don't know how big Tucker is, but I love big dogs.
Yeah, he's a blast.
Can you give us, Matt Berkins wants to know, Matty B, can you give us a rundown? I'm not sure which Matty B, but Matty B, can you give us a rundown of the conversation you would have with a brand new firefighter assigned to you? What would you tell them in case you go to a fire that first night together?
Ooh, tough question. I would tell them that they better beat me in masking up. And if they can't do that, we're going to practice that a lot. So that's something that I've spent a lot of time on, is just making sure that PPE is not something that I have to worry about.
Nice.
You know, in those few moments when we first arrive on scene, like that is the last thing that I want to be worrying about is how difficult it is to put my gloves on or how difficult it is to get my mask on. That should be taken care of, you know, long before we ever arrive at that scene. So I know academies are getting better at that, at making sure that people are great at masking up, getting it done with gloves on. Oh man, dog just pulled the whole cord. So that would be with what I would start. Like that's as basic as it gets, is making sure that PPE is dialed. And then beyond that, I'm going to tell somebody that I'm expecting them to flow a lot of water. And that they do not need to worry about me telling them that that line has to shut off because we've flowed too much. I want to make sure that at any point that they feel like they've encountered heat, that they've encountered a scenario that needs water, that they have no fear of doing it. So
right on.
That is absolutely something that would come up right from the get-go. The other thing I want to say is like the whole reason that we're at this fire is to pull victims out. And so we should never lose sight of our tactics being aggressive and being victim focused, because that is the only reason that a fire department exists, is to make sure that we are doing our job for the community.
Nice. Backup position. You brought it up earlier that it was something that's always kind of fallen behind, or you notice that people don't drill on it. What's some of your most effective drills for practicing the backup position?
You got to get into tight spaces. So my favorite drill to absolutely do is building out some type of scenario where you're in a center hallway environment where you have multiple doors, sometimes offset from one another. So maybe you have two on the left side, one on the right side. And my favorite thing to do is to just simply, start by going, 15 feet down a hallway, make a left turn, right? And then the next rep, we'd go into the first doorway. Let's say we're only expecting somebody to go 8 feet into a left turn, back them out, then go down the hallway, and then make another left turn 15 feet down the hallway. And then once we're dialed on that, then we go left and we go right. You have to put yourself in that compressed environment, because if all we're doing this in is just like in a wide open parking lot, you're never going to get the experience of what it takes and how dynamic it is that backup position. Because obviously, as soon as a firefighter is to cross over a threshold into a new room, things like our ability to communicate back and forth, our ability to understand what that nozzle is doing inside of the next room, it almost goes away. So obviously, if we want to be 10 to 15 feet away from our nozzle firefighter, but the building dictates that spacing has to be something different, that's where you recognize as a backup firefighter that things have to change and that it's very dynamic. You're up and down that line. And I think that's probably the best way that you can learn how to use economy of motion, where if that line has to back out, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to physically take our body 10 feet down the line just to come 10 feet back up when that line has to go forward. Maybe it's just simply shuffling hose 10 feet back at that point and staying in that same position, so that you're recognizing how can I be most efficient with my own body movements, so that you can last through the entire duration of fire attack.
I love it. And that was from Jeremy Humphrey. That was his question, which I did not read his name. So thank you, Jeremy, for a great question. Cody Brooks wants to know, Lieutenant, when on shift out in district, do you ever dry stretch in apartment complexes for reps? I'm looking to see if it upsets the residents in occupied apartments, or do you do it in new construction? What's any experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that was on our topic list, is like get out in your territories and train. And I have not had a single apartment manager or leasing office lady tell me no when I explain when we go into their buildings what we're about to do. Obviously there are some things that we need to explain ahead of time. But I've had a much better luck telling somebody what we're about to do as opposed to asking, hey, can we do this? I might go to, the leasing office or whoever is on site. Sometimes it's a property manager, and just say, hey, we're your local firehouse. We would love to be able to stretch inside of your building, because this is going to be one of those places that's going to be a little more challenging for us if something were to happen. We're not going to flow water, but we're going to do some hose stretches, and we'll do our best to stay out of your way. And like I said, I've got a 100% success rate at this point when I just kind of explain, hey, we're not here to break anything. We're not going to flow any water. We're going to stay out of your way. But we're going to use your building in a live training environment. And it's a lot of fun too, because then that's when a lot of the residents start, peeking their heads out and saying, hey, what are you doing? Oh, thank goodness you're here. Like, I love that you're training. That's where the kids in the neighborhood get involved in hose stretches. And it's just a great time for everybody involved. So please do not be scared to go out and train in your district, because that's where you'll get that realism, and you'll get the variety that you need, because you're just not going to get that if all you do is stay at your firehouse. And I hate to say it, a lot of the training facilities that our fire departments have are even worse training environments than our firehouses. They don't have things like furniture. It's wide open layouts. They don't mimic the buildings that we're actually operating in. Our firehouses do a better job of that. But we can't get the full gamut of the types of stretches that we would do if we don't go out and we explore them in our territories. So, if I need to get better at stretching at a townhouse, I got to go to townhouses. If I need to get better at something like an indent stairway where it only accesses, let's say, 6 apartments, and then we have to go to a different stairway to access another 6. Like, you just cannot mimic that if you're not getting out into your territories. Parking garages are okay to do things like coupling drops or rope stretches. But again, like, there's not an objective to finish with in a parking garage. You can only get that in the buildings that are out there, and we just don't have the opportunities to do it in acquireds like so many of us want to. So we have to resort to using occupied buildings. But again, as long as you're being courteous, as long as you're being respectful, you're taking care of any damages, which, I mean, there shouldn't be any with, just simply stretching dry hoses. People are more than willing to let you be in their buildings.
Nice. No, and that's phenomenal. And that was the topic I was going to bring up next, which is leave the firehouse and train in the territories that you work, which is the topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, and it's beautiful because there isn't so many of our training facilities, like you said, they're just not structured to mimic what we really face. They're structured to be reused.
Correct.
More than anything else, reset and reused.
Yeah, and so many times they're worried about, what's going to break or what's going to mold or whatever it is. We need those realistic environments, and we're just not getting them very often.
Beautiful. Short-term goals versus lifelong dreams. I loved this topic, but I have no idea where it's self-explanatory, but I'm anxious to hear your interpretation.
Yeah, so one thing that I found is, like, I had a lot of dreams in my life, and I think most of us would say that we've got dreams, but where I struggle is starting the process to achieve that dream. I think that it's really easy to throw out some lofty goal, and we should have things that motivate us along the way, but in my mind, I think that short-term goals are greater than long-term dreams. And why? Because it's so much easier to achieve them. And that is so incredibly motivating. Getting little wins along the way, it's incredible how far that will take you motivation wise. It's that whole thing of, like, you have to, eat an elephant one bite at a time. If you're just staring at an elephant and that's your lifelong dream, like, you may never take your first bite because it looks so overwhelming.
Sure.
But if your goal is like, I want to touch that elephant, right? We can achieve that right away. And so I'm a huge fan of figuring out what I can do in the short term. And if I can get short-term wins over and over and over again, I'm going to be so much further in my progression than if I was just looking at some lofty goal at the end of it. So I hope that people are motivating themselves on a daily basis and not getting bogged down in what they hope for, 10, 20 years from now, because you'd be missing out on a lot of things that you could accomplish along the way. I've read a lot of books, and goals. If you were to read like what does it take to make a good goal, one of the acronyms that I hear over and over is to have SMART goals.
Smart. Right.
So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. That's something that also bogs me down. It's like it's got to be written out perfect. And so a lot of times, like I'll just skip some of those steps, and it'll just be as simple as, I want to stretch, 700 feet of hose at work today. It doesn't have to be some like grandiose written down thing in order to get some of those wins. And so please, like, motivate yourself on a daily basis with short-term goals.
No, I want to dig in just a little bit, and you can always say, "Hey, not personal," but like when you say you have dreams and then goals, like what were some dreams that are so big and lofty? And if you want to like pass, that's fine. But and then give me specific examples. You just said stretching 700 feet, so that's kind of a specific example. But go ahead.
It is a specific example, but we'll throw out another example of like this long-term dream that I had. And one of those long-term dreams was getting to teach at FDIC. So if somebody looks at that goal, they're like, oh, shoot, well, like, what does it take to do that? I got to build a class. What does it take to build a class? Maybe it's going to take like, 80 slides on a PowerPoint, and I'm going to have to do, several years worth of research. And I'm going to have to present this, 10 times or whatever number you put in your head ahead of time in order to be dialed enough to teach at a venue like that. That can be really overwhelming.
No, that's the elephant. Yeah.
That can be very overwhelming. Well, let's start with, hey, can I get 5 slides knocked out today over a presentation that I may or may not use? Right. And if I can just knock out 5 today and then maybe 10 by the end of the week, like that is progress, and so those are the types of things that I would look to, because if your goal is just, hey, someday I want to teach at FDIC and that doesn't happen, like motivation is deflated immediately. But, if I'm able to get 10 slides this week and then I've got, 50 by the end of the month, what else can I do with that presentation? Maybe I'm teaching my own fire department. Maybe I'm, doing something a little bit more locally. And you may find that you get so much more pleasure out of that experience than you ever would have of what this lofty dream was at the end of the road.
I love it, man. I love the specificity. I think that's the right word of breaking it down, man. That's beautiful, brother. So thank you for that. So we have a thing we do. First of all, book or books. I want to start with book or books. Book or books that you think. I see a bookshelf behind you there. But what books do you think firefighters should be reading?
So, one that was a big game changer for me. This was probably 12 years ago that I read it. Now was the Fire Stream Management Handbook, and prior to reading that, I would look at a fog nozzle and think that it was the same as any other fog nozzle. And they get so specific in that book. Dave Fornell does an incredible job of just like breaking down the tools of the trade. And that's pretty awesome. And the reason that I bring it back up again is because he just released his 2nd edition. Nice. And so it's actually available again. So get out and buy the 2nd edition of the Fire Stream Management Handbook.
By Fornell.
By Dave Fornell. Yep. The next one that I really love, and there's a couple of reasons for this. I like military reads. I love the University of Texas. And so The Wisdom of the Bullfrog, Admiral William McRaven, get out and check that one out. A lot of quick hitter lessons. You could read it a chapter at a time. You could skip. Excuse me, you could skip around all over that book and just read it, chapter by chapter, and you wouldn't lose any context. He's done a really good job of making that a super easy read. I know that you mentioned read old books. I'm going to throw out an old book at you. Pilgrim's Progress.
Nice.
By John Bunyan. It was written in the 1600s. that was one that a lot of us had on our reading list, you know, back in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, something like that. I reread it about a year ago, 2 years ago. And it was just one of those things that really just made me reflect on my own life and how I was operating on a daily basis. So that one was kind of a game changer for me, just helping me recenter my life, I would say. And then this last one is probably by an author that many people haven't heard of, but just has an incredible story. His name is Jamie Winship. He was a police officer in Washington, D.C., and just because of the track record of how amazing he was at being a police officer, he was actually recruited by the CIA. They came to him and said, "You're going to work for us." And he has now gone all over the world, and he has infiltrated terrorist organizations and just won people over just through conversations. And his book is called Living Fearless. So it's incredible hearing his story where he was not a military unit. He would go in with no weapons, and he could completely change the hearts of people around the world in conflict zones. So that one's pretty awesome as well.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. What a, and you went you went to the 1600s to non-fire related to all the way down to street management.
Yep.
Beautiful. I love it. So we have a thing we do. I don't know. Was there 5 questions for firefighters the first time you were on, or was it just the one question back then?
You know, I haven't.
I'd have to go back and watch. I'd have to go back and see.
I'd have to go back and check out what I actually answered and what I didn't.
Right on. Well, we have the 5 questions for firefighters. We are currently in version, I think we're on 3.0. No, it's 4.0. It is 4.0. You think I ran a podcast and I could answer this, but there are no wrong answers. They are just your opinions, and the points are arbitrary. They're assigned by me with the help of the live audience. So, Jonathan Brumley, are you ready for the 5 questions for firefighters?
Let's do it.
Number 1, you're the probie once more. You have to cook the meal at the firehouse. What is your go-to meal?
I'm going to go foodie on this one, all right? So Dr. Pepper marinated carnitas tacos. I make a creamy habanero sauce, do rice, charro beans. I love Don Julio's tortilla chips, especially the spicier version of it. And I love making a smoked salsa where you put all of the veggies on the smoker before you put it together. So I'll give a shout out to Louisville, Texas. They were the first people to show me the smoked salsa.
Okay. No, you had me at tacos, and then you went well beyond necessary and absolutely crushed it. Sam said there are, in fact, wrong answers, but that was not one of them. Absolutely max points for the Dr. Pepper marinated carnitas tacos with smoked salsa. Did I get the gist of it?
Yep, you nailed it.
Number 2, it is Jobtown. It is time. You're en route and responding. Think of the scene from Backdraft where he slaps the tape into that cassette deck. What song are you playing while en route?
So this one's probably going to lose me max points. This answer might surprise people who know me, but for people who really know me, it won't surprise you whatsoever. I'm going to go with a hip hop song. It's Put On for My City by Young Jeezy.
Put On for My City.
I'm not ashamed to say that, like, I love trap music. And as I've gotten older, it's kind of like the old man who's like, get off of my yard. I struggle with some rap lyrics, but like there's nothing else that gets me more hype than hip hop. So yeah, Young Jeezy.
There you go. No, you'll get that. Greg White said, I can't award you any points for that answer. No, absolutely. It's going to be added. There is a Spotify playlist, and your answer will be added to the list. So it is in there. And Kyle Piverall said, yo, throwback, max points.
I can't let RJ at Capital City be the lone hip hop guy.
You're going to populate. I love it. There you go. 2 for 2, max points. I'll have to check it out and see what I think of your hype song. Number 3, whose boots, past, present, or future, would you like to spend 24 hours in?
It's got to be Captain Bob Morris with the FDNY. Like, who doesn't want to be the boss on Rescue 1 in the FDNY? I can't think of a better company to go do that with. The pedigree of people that he was around, the knowledge that's got to be present in that place. I just cannot think of a better environment to learn, to grow, to be around people who just want to be better at the job. And then also be able to back that up with any number of calls at the end of the day.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely max points, Bob Morris. without a doubt. And I loved seeing him accept his speech and tell his stories from the stage this year. It's just
Mhm.
a yeah. You are retired. Max points, by the way, 1, 2, 3. You are retired. You are sitting on the beach enjoying Mai Tais. What do you want to hear through the grapevine that the people you used to work with? How do you want to hear that they describe you to the new hires?
Um, Man, first and foremost, I want them to say that I love my Father in heaven, that I loved my family and the crews that I work with, and that I answered the call. And I guess what I mean by answered the call, that could be, that when I was on scene, that I did what needed to be done, that I made good decisions. But beyond that, answered the call. Like I feel like I've been in a unique position now for a little while where, man, it seems like at least once a week I get a phone call from somebody all over the world, at this point, just wanting to know, how Denver does something, or, how I would handle a situation, or what they need to do better. And I do my absolute best to get back to all of those people, just because I've been so blessed along the way. And so many people have given me answers. And I will always give every effort that I can to make sure that I answered that call.
You got lots of Kyle Piverall said max freaking points. Taylor Shepard said maximum points, my brother in Christ. And Jay Collier also gave you max points. So across the board, 4 for 4. You're crushing it, Mr. Brumley. So final question. There is heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
So I've been so excited to answer this question for like years, and I didn't even know that I would ever be back on the scrap. But I don't know what episode this was introduced in. Do you know what episode this was introduced in?
I would have to go back and do the research.
I don't know. Let's call it like 275 episodes now. You've asked people, and I'm gonna preface my answer with this: like, it's not at all because of how the question is answered or how it's worded. It's how it's been answered. I feel like over time, VES has become this thing where like it's the only victim-focused answer that people are giving, and I
Okay.
feel like there needs to be a little bit of pushback here because I don't feel like that is anywhere near the truth, right? Somehow it's started to become that if you choose the nozzle, it's like this selfish thing. But look at the firefighter rescue service or the firefighter rescue service data. Like 70% of the victims that are pulled out of fires are along a pathway that a hose line is going to take inside of that building. Like, I love those odds. 70%, that's amazing, right? VES is an incredible tactic. I've been involved in window initiated searches, but just because I go inside of that window doesn't mean that I'm going to pull somebody back out that window with me. But what I do know is if I'm taking a nozzle into that fire, I'm putting the right volume of water on that fire, and great things are going to happen, right? Inside of that environment. And so once again, I like those odds. All right. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take that nozzle. I'm going to take the water that's going to come out of that thing. I'm going to put it between the fire and any victims. And then I'm going to thank God that I'm one of the, few people of 7 billion on this planet that was ever able to do that.
Oh, dude, I love your answer. I love your breakdown of the answer. And no, I don't think you I love your breakdown of the question. So absolutely love your answer. So max points, 5 for 5, easy answer. It's a great point you make. Is just because you get to do the VES, because a lot of people miss that when they answer the question. It's not victim presenting and you're going. It's you have a chance to be on the hose line or a chance to do a VES operation.
Yeah,
And
suddenly
so
somebody does VES and they make a grab every time when they answer
right.
this question. And I'm like, over and over again as an engine guy, I'm like, no, it's not a guarantee. But
And
what
that's
is
why I want to be clear.
guaranteed is
Maybe
that water crushes
yeah.
fire and that it is going to create a better environment for everyone else in that place.
I want to be clear. I love your answer. I think it's a great answer. It's not my answer. I still do the VES, but I love your answer. So max points across the board. And that officially puts 300, the 303, number 303 scrap in the books. Jonathan Brumley, first of all, I want to say thank you for spending your evening with us, the audience on YouTube. And if someone wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to do so?
I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook Messenger, so that's a good way to do it. Email is just jonathan.brumley33@yahoo. And then if you want to do a phone call, send me a text, 970-405-8963.
Right on. And that's I'm surprised your area code is 970. Where's that actually from?
So 970 is Northern Colorado, and thank you, Preston Lyons, for pointing out 303, because 303 is the area code of Denver where I get to work. So it's incredible to be on scrap 303.
Hey, we plan these things. These things are
Yeah,
actually planned. Not a screw up of a scheduling conflict or anything involved.
yeah. So,
305 is Miami. 305 is Miami, and Miami 305 is coming up in a couple weeks.
well,
So,
whenever we get to 970, hit me up again, because that's
okay.
where I live.
Count on it. Count on it. I got one thing we do, as I always ask the guests to give us a challenge for the audience, something to challenge them between this scrap and the next scrap, which will be on Tuesday. But the next scrap,
Mm-hmm.
a week from Tuesday, I should say that, be clear. What challenge do you want to give them?
So we need to go out and we need to do a time drill. All right. Some kind of basic fireground task. You got to put a stopwatch to it, right? Because that's how you truly understand, how well you're doing, right? And probably the best part of it is you can see that engine 1 is better than engine 2, and the stopwatch didn't lie about it,
Right
or ladder 1 is better than ladder 2 at throwing ladders, whatever drill it is that you choose. Definitely involve masking up into it, but don't let it just stop at masking up. Complete a long vertical stretch, hook up to a standpipe, lay hose down a hallway, throw ladders, pull a victim 50 feet, do some kind of time drill.
Love it. Put it to a clock, do a time drill. There's your challenge from Jonathan Brumley. And the last question I have for you is someone you think that should be on the scrap or back on the scrap, because with them, as many guesses as we've had, it's hard to know all of them, but someone you think needs a scrap.
Yeah. So one thing that we didn't get to early on with the whole instructor thing is inspire greatness, and make sure that you're an advocate for the fire department in all ways, especially your own fire department. And
Nice.
so I preface my answer to this question with that. I am promoting my fire department with this answer through and through. We've got a guy on our job who's the most humble dude ever, so he would never want his name called, but his name's Assistant Chief Dave Hagman. I'm going to tell you his pedigree real quick. So he just got his PhD in performance psychology from Johns Hopkins University. He was a starting football player at West Point. He's a combat veteran. He's been an Olympic strength and conditioning coach, and he's heavily involved in youth athletics, especially with his kids. He's presented a few times at places like the Boise Fire Symposium, but his name needs to be all over the United States. So Assistant Chief Dave Hagman.
I didn't want to interrupt you because you had a great hype reel for him. On August 5th of 2025, Assistant Chief Dave Hagman is coming on the scrap. Someone from Denver actually reached out and said, hey, have you and he just did basically what you just said, just you got to get this guy on. He'll never put it out there. And so I reached out. He said yes. So absolutely. Awesome suggestion. So I'm just letting you know you're way ahead of your time.
I am so excited to hear that.
That's awesome. Now, when you started saying it, I was like, I wonder if he's talking about the guy that the other person from Denver suggested. Anyway, that's funny that you said.
So excited to hear that. I know what I'm doing August 5th.
Sweet. And it's a Tuesday. It'll be a Tuesday. Okay. Housekeeping. Go to patreon.com/thevigilantes. The Discord is up and running. The Discord is amazing. There's so much going on in there. It's hard to explain unless you're a part of it. It's very active. If you are looking for a place to connect to like-minded souls, become a vigilante. One of the cool parts about being a vigilante is you get to go to the after party where we're going to roast Jonathan Brumley, and it's going to be amazing. That's the after party. Sam is posting the link as we speak. Coming up on the scrap next week, episode 304, it is Mark Davidson. Again, another one of the originals. Mark Davidson coming back on the scrap. Then for the 305, it is my brother from another mother, the one and only Rob Ramirez, Miami represent, talking. So it's going to be exciting. Every scrap from this point forward, I mean it, is going to be on Tuesday night. I really do mean it this time. I'm not a liar. And that's the plan. Enough jabbering. Let's get to the after party. Thank you once again, Jonathan Brumley, for being amazing. And Tucker. Jonathan and Tucker for both being amazing guests.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Audience, every week I say it. Every week I mean it. You make the scrap what it is. It would not exist without you. Thank you for tuning in live. I love you all. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tones stay silent unless it is burning. This job is not safe, so stay smart out there.